Say what you wanna say to
All right. I know. You're probably like, where have they been? But y'all, we've been busy.
Life been lifing.
Life has been lifing, but we have not abandoned you. We just wanted to touch base and say, hey, you're going to have an episode, the last one that we recorded back in, picture it, 2023. But we just are going to have this episode that we recorded last July. And then we will be back and in charge with a brand new episode just for you. So don't give up on us yet. We're coming back, y'all.
Listen, you are not going to want to miss this story.
All right, y'all. Bye. Hey.
Hey, everybody. What's going on?
What's going on? Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Loved by You podcast. I'm your host, Carrie L, and my co-host,
Me, R.A.
Oh, just R.A. today?
Roberts.
Oh, gosh. Do we have to do this every time? Okay, I guess so, huh? Anyways, welcome back. If you are a faithful listener to our podcast, and if you are new to our podcast, welcome. We are so glad that you decided to join us tonight or today or whenever you're watching this. But anyways, we are in episode 22. Can you believe it, Pat?
Again, yes. Our notes say episode 22.
You know what? Anyways. And tonight we are going to talk about marriage and ministry. So, for those of you who do not know, we are both licensed and ordained ministers, and we've been in this marriage thing for over 20 years.
Picture it. Sicily. 19.
Yeah. For those of you who are Golden Girl fans, that's, our wonderful Sophia. But anyways, so we have been in this marriage game for over 20 years, and we have also, I would say, how long have we been in ministry together?
Together?
Yeah.
Well, that all depends on if you look at it as very much our belief that if one is called, then the other is called, because I was licensed right after we got married. Mm-hmm. So if you want to look at that, it's been 20 years.
Yeah.
But
I didn't.
Before you got licensed after me. Mm-hmm. But I think we didn't actually truly start ministry together until maybe a year or so after you got, licensed.
Right. So I would say it's been about 7 years that we've truly been in ministry together.
Yeah.
And so the question or questions that I guess I would ask is, does marriage and ministry go together like peanut butter and jelly? Or is it like oil and water? So what do you think, babe?
I think it can be both. It should go together like peanut butter and jelly.
Peanut butter, jelly time? No. Okay. Anyway.
But I think sometimes it is an oil and water. And I would say that because we've said before, marriage be hard.
Mm-hmm. It do.
But a lot of people will also say that ministry be hard too.
Yeah.
And so I think those are the times when it's oil and water.
Yeah.
When they're both hard, especially if only one person feels like they're in ministry.
Right. And I think too, one of the things is if we say that marriage be hard sometimes and ministry be hard. I mean, I've always said that sometimes ministry is not always ministering to others or to you, because one of the things with ministry, and I think ministry can many times be harder than marriage. And the reason why I say that is because ministry, you have to deal with multiple people with different personalities, different spiritual maturities. And with marriage, you only have to deal with that person. You know, well, of course, you deal with the families too, but you know.
Well, I would say ministry also has different facets, because there is, you know, as I feel, every believer in Christ has a ministry, but then there's also different levels, as in, you know, is your ministry cleaning the church,
right, or
cutting the church grass, or teaching in the children's church ministry, or being a regional or statewide leader, or being a senior pastor, being an associate. So I think there's different levels of ministry, different facets of ministry, rather. And I think they all can enhance your marriage, and your marriage can enhance your ministry, whatever facet of ministry you're in.
Yeah. And I think depending on the facet of ministry or the level of ministry that you're in, it can present different issues.
Right. Because if your ministry is cleaning the church, then you can deal with, oh, well, you always cleaning the church, but you don't ever come clean the house.
Right.
You know, you spend 2 hours cutting the church grass, but I've been asking you to prune my azaleas.
Your azaleas? Really?
My azaleas.
Okay. Okay. But yeah, so I think when we talk about like how hard is marriage and ministry together, you know, and I think the answer really would surprise you, because it is complicated. And it really depends on, you know, where you are, I think, in your marriage, as well as where you are in your ministry, and your vision behind that. I think in everything that you do, it should be a team effort.
Yes.
And I think where people go wrong is that they don't compartmentalize when they need to. And what I mean by that is that sometimes your spouse needs you as a spouse, not as a ministry partner. Like, you know, sometimes I just need you to hold me or whatever, not be, you know.
Well, because marriage in itself is a ministry. You know, just as we always say that marriage is the house that the family lives in. If you look at your marriage as a ministry, where you know, because basically a ministry is serving others.
Yeah.
And so if you're serving your spouse in your marriage in a godly way, then that's going to reflect on your children and your friends and your neighbors. Once you get married, I truly believe and feel that marriage is your first ministry, and marriage is your primary ministry above your other ministries.
Right.
Because that's the one.
That's your foundation.
That's your foundation.
Yeah. And I think, too, a lot of times I think we do not really agree with, and I'm not talking about like us per se, but I think a lot of times there's complications when ministry goes against like where you are in your marriage. Like you have a conversation and I need a husband.
So the thing is that when your marriage is your first ministry, like you said, it's the foundation for everything. Because your friends see your marriage, more than they see your ministry. Especially if, sometimes people, they'll only see, like, if your ministry is within a local church, they'll only see that when you're interacting in your local church, but your marriage, they see that all the time. Your ministry of your marriage as a strong foundation, it just builds on your other ministries because you have that foundation. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not going to be rough times in your marriage and in your ministry life. Mm-hmm. They can mix better like peanut butter and jelly than they can like oil and water, which never mixes. And so ministry can put a strain on your marriage. Again, especially if you and your spouse are not working in ministry together. Mm-hmm. So, for example, let's say I am the Sunday school teacher.
Yeah.
I'm the children's church director. And so I'm working with the kids, and little Susie has something going on at her school, so I want to go to the school, but yet you want to go and have a date night that night.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter that little Susie, you don't care that little Susie is having a dance recital.
Right, because you're messing with my plans.
Right. Now, if it's an issue of, well, we're in ministry together, and so we both see the importance of being there for little Susie's recital and for having date night, then it's like, okay, well, we can go to little Susie's recital for the beginning, and then we'll leave during intermission, and we'll go and have our date night.
Right. And that's the thing, too. I think one of the biggest things when you are married and in ministry together, you have the same vision, and you have the same goal in mind. You're working towards the common goal. And so I think when that happens, you can be okay with compromising and making things work and being flexible, because that's how, honestly, you get the balance with marriage and ministry. Now, I think when you are married and you are also in ministry, it gives a lot of opportunity for the enemy to come in and really like mess up things, because if he can mess you and your partner up in your marriage, then he can ultimately mess up the ministry and the mission of God. Yeah. And so, like, it's kind of like, I remember when we would go to right before we would go to church, to Sunday school, and Lord knows we gonna have a good Sunday school lesson for for the youth, but we would get in an argument.
Right. You would show out, and then we would get in an argument.
I would show out.
Mm-hmm. That's what I said. Yep.
I would show out.
You would show out. Mm-hmm.
Just me?
I'm glad you repeating it and you finally acknowledging it after all these years.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Anyways, but we would get in an argument over silly, stupid stuff. And that is how I would know, like, it is really like us, I don't like to give the enemy that much credit, but, we would allow for, like, things would always get stirred up before we're about to do something. Yeah.
Well, and even the other times is when God is speaking to one spouse initially, but the other spouse hasn't heard it yet. And so you come to me with, hey, I really think God is saying this. Oh, well, I haven't heard that yet, so no, we're not going to do that. Then that throws a wedge in, because it's like, well, I know God too, and God ain't say that to me. So, no, I'm not moving to Alabama because God ain't tell me
Right.
So you ain't hear from God about moving to Alabama. You just want to move to Alabama. And it's like, no, God hasn't spoken to you yet, because one, God may be dealing with one spouse initially.
And also, too, you didn't harden your heart and you pop it off at the mouth. And so, of course, you can't listen to God because you just talking.
Yeah.
Like you doing
I'm
all
glad
that.
you acknowledge that.
I'm talking
No.
about you.
but it's one of those things where it's like, that's again where the enemy can creep in, because you're godly too. So if God really wanted to do that, then
He would
have mentioned it to you too. And so they just want to go and do that because, X, Y, and Z, or, blase, and then it's there's dissension in the marriage.
Yeah. When it's like, sometimes you just need to shut up for a little while. Like allow for God to speak to you and not be so quick to shut down your partner. So one of the articles that we were looking at, and it was basically balancing marriage and ministry is like walking a tightrope. Okay. And so in this article, it's 5 ways to balance marriage and ministry. Ministry and marriage. And this is a blog from ABWE International. And so from the first thing that they were saying is that you need to make your expectations clear. And so basically, this is one of those things that you really have to be sure that, I always say, like, there shouldn't be any kind of confusion. Like, I want everything to be crystal with whatever you're asking. And so unmet expectations are a leading reason for struggle in ministry. And so when you are, I think this is in marriage as well as in ministry, there's such a need for you to share with your lead partner, your life partner, your goals and dreams and expectations and your vision for what you desire in the ministry, or what you feel like God is calling y'all to do in ministry, as well as your expectations and dreams and goals in marriage.
Yeah, because when you take two completely different people with two completely different lifestyles and worldviews and all of this, they're going to have two completely different ideas of what marriage and ministry look like. And so if you don't share those expectations of, well, this is what I'm thinking, and you just base it and you just feel, well, hey, this is what I think you should do in marriage and ministry. And then if your spouse doesn't do that, then you're like, well, wait a minute. They aren't doing it right. Or that's not how you do it. You're out of God's will because drunk some of your water before you prayed. So in that you have to talk. We've talked about having those lines of communication with your spouse. But it's so true in ministry that whatever your ministry is, you need to talk about that ministry and what is it going to look like. Like, if that ministry is cleaning the toilets at the church, like, okay, well, how often are you going to do that? How long are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? Who's going to buy the cleaning supplies?
Right.
And are we not going to go on vacation now on days when you have to clean, have
All
those
things.
Right. Have those expectations and those talk beforehand,
And I think, too, remembering that it is a partnership. You should never feel lonely in marriage as well as in ministry. If you are with that person and it's a team effort, you should communicate, talk about the elephant in the room, and communicate when things are bothering you, when things are not exactly turning out the way you had expected them to.
Yeah. Now, number 2 is a major one for me. It is something that I've always preached forever. Practice Sabbath rest. Like, take the time to understand the Sabbath principle, that even God, after he created everything, on that last day, he rested. So that means it's okay for you to take a rest from your ministry. It's one thing that I've always said, that, senior pastors should take the month of August off. The month of July, the month of August, take it off and rest. Go rejuvenate and recoup. Because one, you need to prioritize your time to get away and focus on God. And sometimes that's hard to do when you're always working and fulfilling the ministry, that we get so busy working that we forget to take a rest and listen to God.
Right.
And then also in that time, you need to not only rest and rejuvenate with your ministry, but you also need to rest and rejuvenate with your spouse.
Right.
I think it's important to show your spouse that, hey, our marriage, this ministry comes first.
Right.
That our marriage is still the most important ministry in my life.
And just to kind of give a little scripture, or Deuteronomy 5th chapter, 12th through the 14th verse, and it says, observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy, as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter or your male servant or your female servant or your ox or your donkey or any of your cattle or your sojourner who stays with you, so that your male servant and your female servant may rest as well as you.
And you know what the 7th month is? July, but I'm just saying.
Yeah. So, it's important. It really is.
Right. And sometimes taking that rest, taking that time away from the ministry can help you refocus and look at things and how they operate. I think even if, let's say you're a senior pastor and you don't want to leave your church, take a day of rest and let somebody else speak. Somebody else moderate service. Because then also, now it's hard to see something from the inside looking out, but when you're on the outside looking in, you can look and be like, you know what? Doing that little part of the service really would work better if we do it somewhere else. But if you're the one always doing it, it's kind of hard to see. So
yeah, and it only operates as well as you have taught it to, or your leadership. So when you see that they can actually operate without you, it should make you feel good,
right?
Because that means that you taught well.
And also that means if you practice this Sabbath rest idea, you also getting the light of God, because he commanded you to rest and you are obeying him. And so you're not only honoring his command, but you're refreshing yourself. So
right. The third one is setting boundaries that best serve you. And I think this is... Can
we say it one more time for the people in the back?
Setting boundaries that best serve you. You guys, every game has rules. Everything has parameters. And without healthy boundaries, then you can't understand the rules of the game, or it never can be played well. I think when you don't have healthy boundaries in place, and that's I think that's where marriage and ministry sometimes needs those boundaries between the two. Yes, you are in ministry together. Yes, it is a partnership. Yes, it is a team. effort. But when it comes to your marriage, there still needs to be parameters in place where your ministry doesn't infiltrate your marriage too much.
Yeah.
You know?
I like the analogy of the guardrails because, I think of, like when you're looking at over the Grand Canyon, you have the beautiful picture of the Grand Canyon, but there's that guardrail there that prevents you from falling and tipping over the edge. And now, yes, that guardrail, when you go to take the picture, the guardrail may, quote unquote, ruin your picture, but without that guardrail, you're going to fall.
Right.
So it's like, I wish the guardrail wasn't there. I would make a better picture. But if you don't have the guardrail there, okay, you'll have a beautiful, immaculate picture, but nobody's going to see it because you're going to fall over the edge.
Exactly.
So
the fourth thing is to remember why you got married, and that is to glorify God. This is simple, but very critical. You must get on the same page about who God is, why you are married, and why you are serving Him. And I think that is so crucial to having a healthy marriage as well as having a healthy ministry. Because if you are so wrapped up in, like you said, in doing ministry, and, even if you're so wrapped up in doing marriage, and you forget why you're doing those things, it really is all for nothing.
Yeah. I think it's important to, remember why you got married, to glorify God, is that in your marriage, you're glorifying God. But in order to truly serve Him and to glorify Him, you have to get to know Him and you have to spend time with Him. And so you have to reflect on your marriage and be like, hey, what is my spiritual growth and my spouse's spiritual growth looking like? And it's like, I remember one of our pastor's wives would say to us is that you have to refill your cup. When you are doing ministry, when you're in ministry, you're always pouring out of your cup. But if you don't take that time to refill your cup with the word and talking with God and allowing God, when that cup is empty, like, you're going to get burned out. That's what you have to remember, is to refill your cup. And it's sometimes that cup is also your cup of marriage. Like, if your marriage cup is empty, you're not going to be able to have a successful ministry.
Right.
You're not going to have, because again, that your marriage is the foundation. So if your marriage cup is empty, you're not going to be able to fill your ministry cup, because your ministry cup is filled from your marriage cup, which is filled from God. So if those cups are empty, you're not going to be impactful or anything, because all of that flows from God into one, into the other. And I always say that you operate in ministry in the overflow of your marriage, and your marriage operates in the overflow of what God is pouring into you. So
the last one is engage in proactive life planning. And I think this is something that can be done definitely during the time when you are refocusing on why you are married and why you are in ministry, and that's to glorify God. So with this one, go back to the basics and ask your spouse these questions. Number 1, who are we? Number 2, where are we going? Number 3, what are we doing? And number 4, why are we doing this? And I think too that you will find that when you actually have these check-ins, and it don't have to be like every week or whatever, but I think it's important that you go back to those questions, periodically, just to make sure we're still on the same page. We're still in this to win this. Like, we're still in this to glorify God. We are still doing this for Him and through Him and by Him. Because I think that there are a lot of times people get into marriage and they even get into ministry, and it does start to become like oil and water. And so it's one of those things you kind of have to take a step back and be like, are we going to be like oil and water? Because like you said, if that marriage cup is not filled, that ministry cup cannot, it's impossible for it to get filled.
Yeah.
And for you to be impactful and glorify God in an impactful way. So
because there also could be times of who are we and where are we going. If those don't line up with what are we doing, then there's a problem. So like if you feel, hey, I am a marriage pastor and within my local church, and where are we going, feel and have long lasting marriages, and you get to, well, what are we doing? Oh, well, we're running the nursery at the church.
that doesn't.
You're out of line.
Yeah.
So then you ask the question, well, why are we doing this?
You're out of line.
Yeah, you're out of line. And honestly, you're out of line and you're out of the will of God. Because then you ask, well, why are we doing this? Well, we're doing this because nobody else was working in the ministry, and the ministry is important, and it's like, and it is.
But you're completely out of order and out of alignment
Right.
with who we are and what we are, where we are going.
Right.
And it's like, because like you said, when you have a true focus and a true vision, then everything that you're doing and saying should align with that theme, with that vision that you have.
Yeah. Because the thing we have to remember is that God created us as limited creatures. He is all powerful and omnipresent and can do any and everything and be any and everywhere at any time. But we can't. We're limited, our resources are limited, and our abilities are limited. So where are we using that energy and that time? Are we using it to forward God's kingdom, to glorify God, or are we doing it to be busy? And so if we're that marriage ministry couple, but we're working in children's ministry, we're not ever going to be able to work on that marriage ministry part because we're always doing the children's ministry part.
Right.
And we'll never have our cup, there won't be anything left in our cup for the marriage ministry because we're always working in children's ministry. So.
Right. And you'll be completely out of order, and it will bring chaos because you're not in step with what God has told you to do. So, yeah. But you guys, I just want to just say too, in conclusion, that like we said, marriage be hard, ministry be hard. So take it in stride, give yourself grace, because we are human and you're going to make mistakes and you're going to have to figure it out sometimes and you're going to have bumps in the road, but that's how we learn. And so
Right.
you can't expect it to be perfect, because this is new, So definitely marriage and ministry can work, and it can be something that truly is impactful, but it also is something that truly glorifies the Father. And so hopefully this was helpful podcast for you. And you guys, I want to just say that I'm so thankful to be loved by you, babe.
And I'm thankful to be loved by you.
And we're thankful to be loved by him. Bye, y'all.
Bye. Peace out.
No, I'ma wake up with